Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. So, the planet Kessel, right? Turns out that it was actually a lot nicer place to be once upon a time. And actually, I guess technically half of the planet is still a very nice place. So, let's back up a little bit and tell you the story of Kessel. So, apparently as a planet, it has a very vibrant ecology according to the Solo Star Wars Story official guide. Lush forests and so on and so forth. But the royal family of Kessel decided that, hey, let's make some money. And so they essentially sold off half of the planet for mining operations. And it turns out that the Pikes living on the planet Obadiah, which is basically just outside the Acades Maelstrom, so, right at the mouth of it, at least as depicted in the maps in Solo: A Star Wars Story. Perfect placement for them to get involved with this whole mining operation situation. So they made a deal with the king of Kessel to be able to mine half of the planet and, make as much money off of it as possible. And of course, put kickbacks out to the royal family as well for the whole situation too. So, the royal family gets to live large in the southern hemisphere of Kessel while the northern hemisphere is getting strip mined for all it's worth. Now, the Pikes themselves, you won't see too many of them on Kessel itself because their physiology doesn't hold up well with all the things that they're doing to Kessel, irony of ironies. And so that guy, K. Tolsite, he's the guy who showed up at the arrival of the Millennium Falcon on Kessel and talked with Kira, and then that's the one that Kira killed, or subdued, I think killed probably, right? Because it looked like he was stabbed in the chest with the keys. He's a Pike, and there are Pike guards or Pike sentinels as well, but they may not actually be Pikes. They are described as thugs who have been hired by the Pikes to keep an eye on the slave population and so forth, but they may be species entirely different from Pikes. Anyway, so the Pikes are the ones who worked out the deal with King Yoruba of Kessel and are solely profiting from the whole situation on Kessel. Now, Kessel is first seen canonically, right? Like actually seen in Solo: A Star Wars Story. So as far as the whole timeline of the Star Wars universe, this is actually the very first time that we get to see Kessel, but it is not actually the first time from a real-time chronology standpoint that we've seen Kessel. Star Wars Rebels actually involved the planet Kessel in its very first episode. That would be in the TV movie premiere Spark of Rebellion, and it's notable because there were Wookiee slaves being transported to Kessel, and the Ghost crew was actually working to prevent that from happening. They rescued the Wookiees, but it was also the place where Kanan Jarrus had to reveal himself as a Jedi, and that was, to be able to protect everybody while they were trying to make good their escape. And that, of course, had implications naturally as well. But the whole thing about Kessel, too, in that regard, is that when they went to Kessel, the whole, interstellar cloud, the maelstrom, the Acades Maelstrom, and all of the other stuff around it, the cicada cluster, and so forth, they don't really draw a distinction as far as the cicada here we go again with that. The Cyclada cluster and the Acades Maelstrom, like which is which, like ultimately what creates that whole cloud around Kessel. Which part of it is the cluster and which part of it is the Maelstrom. Anyway, the point is that their approach to Kessel, the Ghost Crew's approach to Kessel, does not look anything like the approach to Kessel that was made by the Millennium Falcon in Solo: A Star Wars Story. It's been suggested that this is a continuity error on the part of Lucasfilm, but then again, they do say that the interstellar gases and debris and whatnot shift over time, and so for all we know, it's not a continuity error. Maybe they just happen to pick a terrific time to show up at Kessel, the Ghost Crew did, in which case then it's too bad they didn't show up in the Falcon, because they could have done a Kessel run in less than 11 or even 10 parsecs, and then that would have given Harrison Dula even bigger bragging rights over Han Solo and the performance of the Ghost as compared to the Millennium Falcon. And that whole thing ties into a Forces of Destiny episode, one of my favorite ones, where the Ewoks are shown as the bloodthirsty scoundrels that they are, and Princess Leia is having to fight with the Ewoks to prevent them from eating stormtroopers. But anyway, that's an aside. So that ultimately is the story of how Kessel became Kessel, because the royal family sold out half the planet to mining operations and let it be utterly trashed in the name of profits and living a lush life. And that is going to do it for the episode today. Over on the audio version of the podcast at sw7x7.com/iTunes or wherever you like to listen to podcasts, I'm doing Last Jedi trivia there, so do check that out. For now, though, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.